afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar, Innovative and Creative Ideas for Worship and Congregational Engagement. I'm Dr. Reggie Nichols. I'm the Director of Leadership Development for the conference, and just excited to have you join us. So as you're joining, please list your name, your church that you're from, the congregation that you're from, and also, if you would, how about list?
Your audio just cut out, Reggie.
Got it.
Oh, now it's back out again. Now
Okay.
You're solid.
Yeah, I muted. I don't know. I think I muted myself. That's terrible. Maybe that's good. So thank you. I thought it'd be helpful to introduce our panelists. We have a wonderful group of panelists, and I'm going to share a screen with you today. So we have four panelists that are with us today: Reverend Kathy McShane, Reverend Alan Jones, Reverend Craig Brown, who is our Executive Director for Congregational Ministries, and myself. And so I thought it would be helpful to have them introduce themselves in a minute. And then I want to also talk about some of our learning outcomes today from our session. We know that this is a multiple COVID moment, not just one. And so we're going to be talking about and thinking about how do we curate ideas and transitional elements during this time. The COVID-19 has caused us to emphasize the importance of moving from merely online to digital. And people are feeling overwhelmed, clergy, lay leaders, as well as congregants. And how do we work through that in our worship session? We're going to hear about some ways that we possibly can expand community through sharing and hearing, and possibly implementing new ideas and expressing some ideas of ways the conference can support you. And then setting some realistic expectations about COVID moments and continuing to grow in enduring practices, missional work, and self-care. So that's some of the stuff that we'll be looking at today. But let me have our panelists introduce themselves. First, Reverend McShane, welcome and good morning, good afternoon.
Thanks, Reggie. So I'm Kathy McShane. I'm the senior pastor at Los Altos United Methodist Church. Yeah, that's who I am. I will just say that we were live streaming our worship services before we entered into the sheltering in place, and still it's been a quick turn into living life that way, and it has required some adjustments, and we're in it just like everybody else is. So I'm glad to be in this exchange of ideas today.
Thank you, Kathy. And Alan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Alan Jones, pastor from St. Mark's United Methodist in Sacramento. And I'm here almost by mistake because I raised a concern. And so when you open your mouth and raise a concern about something, you tend to get included in trying to find the solution. And I was saying that here we are 6 months in, and I'm feeling as though I need some creativity in this whole situation. And I think we've been somewhat creative, but 6 months in, you need to shift gears yet again and find some new ways of doing things. Unlike Kathy's situation, we're not live streaming. We had decided we would go ahead and do live streaming, and the equipment didn't arrive before COVID did. And it got stuck in China, and it arrived last week. So maybe sometime in the future, we'll be doing live streaming.
Well, thank you both for sharing. I'm going to ask you a question in a moment. I want to ask Craig, you've gotten some information from GCFA on measuring and what is essential for engaging a congregation. So what's some of the information that you received from the GCFA regarding measurement statistics and what's going on relative to this COVID moment?
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back with you. And the hat has shifted, so I'm just here for effect. Kind of exciting. I serve as your Executive Director of Congregational Development for the annual conference. Before I came to this position, I served as the Senior Pastor of First United Methodist Church of San Diego. And that church, about 2,500 members, we started live streaming our worship services in 2014. And after quite a significant installation. So we've been through a lot of ups and downs over all that time. I served as their pastor when we put that system in. So I bring what is today would be considered ancient experience about how you would do that kind of work back in the late 20-teens. There's some things that I just want to share with you very quickly before I get to the GCFA material about how we count attendance and online worship. You know, one of the things that happened when we went into the pandemic and the suspension of in-person worship occurred, that churches noticed this booming number of people watching their worship services. I would hear from congregations saying, well, we have 500 people watching our service. We have 600 people watching our worship service. And we need to get a little bit of clarity about that. So what I'm going to do real quick is I want to show you my Facebook feed. I know this is like showing somebody your laundry, right? So here's my Facebook feed. Here's my friend Jason Moore. And you see I can scroll through my Facebook feed like this. As I'm scrolling through my feed, if there's a video that starts to play, that counts as a view. I may not look at it. I may not pay attention to it. I may not even click on it. But if the video plays in the Facebook feed, even as I'm scrolling through, stalking all the people I know in Facebook, it counts as a play. So imagine all the people looking through their Facebook feed and they, you know, your church happens to be in it, or perhaps even on your personal feed, you've linked your church's live or recorded worship on Facebook. It counts as a person. So in order to get a good view of your attendance of your online worship, you have to go deeper into the analytics. You just can't look at how many people viewed it. That is giving you false information about how many people are engaging with your church. And so I'm going to put a link in the chat, which is to a PDF document that comes from GCFA. So hopefully this works right. It's a rather lengthy link. If you click it, it'll open up a PDF document that you can look at later. You don't need to look at it now. You might have noticed in 2017, GCFA added a question on our Table 1 reports we turn in every year, which is not only our average attendance at our weekly worship services, but also the number of persons who worship online. So how do you calculate how many people worshiped with you online, either live or after the fact? Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, several other platforms all provide deeper analytics about your online participation, whether they're watching it live, which would be called symmetrical, or if they're watching it later, which is called asymmetrical. And what you're looking for is to see who either commented, registered their attendance, indicated they were present, that in some way they checked in, either live or recorded, symmetrical or asymmetrical. A good practice right now that's recommended by GCFA and is recommended around the country across denominations is what you want to do is look at your worship service probably after at least a week. So let's say you put it on live and it's posted like on Vimeo or YouTube, and so people have had a week to watch it. What you want to do is go to the middle of the sermon and look for the average number of people that watched that video in the middle of the sermon for about 5 minutes. Not 1 minute, 5 minutes. You want to kind of look at the average of the people that were tuned into the sermon for about a 5-minute window. Whatever that number is, you multiply that number by a factor, because what it's trying to figure out is how many people were sitting on a couch watching that. And the agreed upon factor that's really been settled on now is 1.7. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you go into your Facebook analytics and you find that during the middle 5 minutes of the sermon, there was an average of 100 people who saw that part of your live stream. You would take that average of 100, multiply it by 1.7. That gives you the attendance for that, the online attendance for that service. So the information here is important because it's not just about how many people hit the page. It's about how many people participated in the service at its most centralized part. And that's the number you're trying to get at. The PDF document that I posted in the chat gives you some information about how to do that from GCFA. Just make sure that you're paying attention to the instructions it gives you around Facebook and things like that. The thing that's not in the document that I want to make sure I say again, the factor is 1.7. 1.7. So you're multiplying the average attendance at the center of your worship service by 1.7. Okay, that's it. If you need this document in another form, I'll make sure the link is here. Tua should have it as well in the chat. And after the webinar is over, we can post it on the web page where you can archive this webinar. In other words, go back later and watch it. All right. All right, Dr. Nichols, does that do the job?
Hey, thanks,
All
Craig, for sharing that. And we're going to be putting some more links in the the chat as we go along. But I wanted to ask Kathy and Alan, and we're going to use a breakout room format in a moment to get some information from you. But I want to ask Kathy and Alan, what have you learned in the past 6 months relative to worship? What are some things that you want to keep, and what are some things that you want to change? I'll start with Kathy.
I was hoping you were going to start with Alan.
Alan was listed. I know I should have, but my mother always taught me that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, ladies first. Thanks, Reggie. So we have been, obviously our worship has been online. We've also done quite a few other things online. We send out daily videos to our congregation. They go by email and by a number of different social media channels. I've done some different kinds of things in these first 6 months than I did before. I read a chapter book on video, so that chapter by chapter I could be speaking with children in the congregation. And I did a 15-minute a day video that was kind of a deeper teaching model than I would typically do, because I felt like people had time. So I would say at this 6-month place, I feel like we've done a good job of holding the congregation together, right? We've really worked on helping people remain connected to their church. What I think we haven't done well enough, and that we are making a turn toward now, is focusing more clearly on the people who have come to worship with us online for the first time, right? Who are not members of this church, aren't even constituents of this church in the way that it existed before we were fully online, and making a new connection with them. So I've learned that that we are not only, I would say, kind of holding the church together through this time so that we're okay at the end when we come out and we do real church again. We really have to think of this as, this is church now and for the foreseeable future. I think we're moving from, and we have to move from seeing church as what we do in person and it's also for the people who watch online, to seeing we do church for people remotely, and some people might eventually be back in the sanctuary with us too. But the primary focus of our worship, I think, and our connection with one another, our ways of creating community have to shift.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, and it's moving from the online, just an online thing, to a digital thing. So not just online, because online could have even been temporary or something, but how do you do it digitally? So one of the things I'm going to put in the chat, a feed from one of the clergy here in Sacramento, Kim Montenegro, is about phone calls. How do you do phone call church? And I'll put that online because that's a digital platform that has not been used, and not just online, but the digital includes online, right? So, and how do you connect people digitally? So thank you, thank you. How about you, Alan? What have you learned over the past 6 months? What are some things that you want to keep? Maybe some things you want to change?
Well, just to continue what you were talking about, it's taken us 6 months to discover the telephone connection. Where I've been concerned about maybe 35, 40 people in our congregation who don't do anything online. They only do telephone. And finally, we got the service where you can upload your worship service and people can call into a phone number 24/7 and hear the Sunday worship service. If anybody's interested, it's called Sermon by Phone, sermonbyphone.com. You can find it. It's relatively inexpensive, especially for a smaller group of people, but it's certainly worth checking out.
I just put the link online, so in the chat, so you can go straight to the chat.
Okay. I was pretty scared by all of this because this was all very new to me. And what we have done is to do a video recording that we upload to YouTube, and it goes out on Facebook and various Instagram and so on. What I found really great about that is that the people doing all the legwork on it are young adults in the congregation and youth. And so my observation is in the last 6 months, we've had a lot more youth and young adult participation than we did previously. That was enhanced by the fact that we were just coming to the end of confirmation class when COVID hit. And so I've had the confirmation class members involved in leading worship for the last 6 months. And it's been great. And we've been able to introduce them to the congregation in a way that wouldn't have happened if we were doing it in person. I'm finding a lot of things that I really like about this situation. I am a great fan of Zoom. I think Zoom is helping us see each other more intimately. We're going into each other's homes in a way that didn't happen before. In terms of worship content, I've been very inspired by my colleague Elizabeth Brick across the river, who does all her worship services standing by the American River. She preaches a sermon, she does prayers, everything as she stands by the river. And that's reminded people that the sanctuary is a movable feast, and people are going to the river and finding themselves experiencing a new quality of spirituality. Something I've been doing is I've been inviting colleagues to come and lead the prayers in our service each week. So I've had all my circuit colleagues do it, and a couple of rabbis, and I've got a Catholic priest next week. And this is a way of introducing people. I've also done a number, instead of regular sermons, done interviews. I did an interview with the bishop on Zoom and some other folk. And that works so much better when you're working online rather than, I guess it's good if you can do it in person in the sanctuary. Okay. Yeah, at the moment, air conditioning is broken down in our sanctuary. Most weeks I've been going to the sanctuary to record material for the worship service. I don't need to do that anymore because I got a green screen. So I can actually put myself in the sanctuary on a green screen when I'm at home. The other thing I found really, really helpful, and I would never have thought of this, but Hubert Ivory inspired me with this, is to get a teleprompter. I think my teleprompter cost about $170. It's just a contraption that allows you to put your phone in the back of it, and there's a glass screen that reflects up what's on a tablet below. So you just set off the tablet, scrolling down, and it means that it's much easier to have eye contact. So I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot too about the growing community, and seeing that our worship service is being viewed actually by some people across the country and across the world. It is very humbling, and my real challenge at this point is how we connect those people. It's the same as Kathy was mentioning. I hear the table is doing a good job on that, and finding ways to invite people in. So we should be listening to what they're doing, and I think that will do for me.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. We're going to go into breakout rooms. One of the things that I've heard is that we could have an opportunity to share with each other about what's going on. So we're going to go into smaller rooms and share. I have 4 moderators. I'll be one of the moderators. We're going to ask you some of the things that you're doing now, if you'd be willing to share. What are some things in your missional practices that you want to keep? What are some things you want to change? And then when we come back together, I want to ask a question. How can the annual conference support you, especially as we're going into this fall season? So we're going to go into breakout rooms about 15, más o menos 15, 20 minutes. Then we'll come back out of the breakout rooms, ask some questions about how we can support you. And then from 5 to 5:30, we're going to have open mic where you can ask any questions, because we want to hear from you. We want to support you in your work in ministry. Even as vast as and diverse as the conference is, we want to find out ways and share ways that you're doing wonderful work and how we can support you in continuing to do great work. So with the magic of Zoom, we're going to go into breakout rooms. So Tua, hit it. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for hanging tough with us as we went through the breakouts. I hope that the time together in the breakout rooms was helpful for you, and some new ideas and ways emerged for you. We have 65 plus that are on the in the Zoom meeting today. It'd be hard to get everyone's responding. So I'm going to ask you to use the chat feature down at the bottom. Also, if you have questions, use the chat feature down at the bottom. I'm going to ask Kathy and Alan and Craig if there's some things that you heard in your groups that you just want to share that you heard, some innovative ideas. One of the things I heard, I'll start out, was some things about using children with in video clips that have been used to encourage and to connect with parents, how to have coffee hour without donuts, virtual coffee, as a way of connecting with people. A Facebook Live and YouTube Live with pastors that are available in for chat was helpful. Some of the challenges were compatible bandwidth, especially with singing and other things that are live, and moving into a hybrid situation where you, if we go back into worship in a building, having still an online or digital presence, just in case a second wave hits, or you have weather, or as it is today, you have smoke. So, how do you do those types of things? Some other things that you've heard, Kathy or Craig or Alan?
I'll say I heard a wide variety of technologies being used. And I think particularly what I heard from some of the smaller churches in our represented in our breakout room was that that technology can be a problem, but it can be done, some kind of broadcasting of worship can be done very, very simply. Sometimes just with a cell phone, a camera on a cell phone and a tripod. It really doesn't take very much more than that. Sometimes by Zoom, sometimes on Facebook. You know, there are many different platforms, and I heard lots of creativity.
I was interested, Bernard L. Huey was talking about keeping a very personal connection in the way that worship is presented. And she talked about some of the things she's doing to keep that personal connection. And she's perplexed by those of us who are doing a video presentation ahead of time where there is no direct interaction. And so that got me thinking about how we do both styles.
Yes, both synchronous, live, and asynchronous, pre-recorded. I think that's we talked a little bit about that in our breakout room, because those are two options. Either you're live streaming or you're pre-recording, which is asynchronous recording. And using either one of those platforms, they're doing a hybrid, either face-to-face or some other digital means of doing worship. So, how about you, Craig? Did you hear some things?
Yeah, we heard from our group the value of having different people engaged in the online worship, especially from the context of the congregation, that a monologue from the pastor alone may have its upsides, but it loses the advantage of being able to see some kind of texture of the congregation, and the recognition of how important it is that worship is kind of a communal event. It's something that happens by the community. So seeing the community and engaging the community is an important piece of that work. It requires a lot of work ahead of time to do that, but the payoff seemed to be worthwhile.
Right. Well, thank you. So a question I wanted to ask everyone here that's on the in the meeting is what are some of the ways that the conference can support you, especially as we go into this this next season, into the fall, into Advent? What are some ways that we can support you? And I'm very concerned about some churches, some congregations that do not have the technology capacity or the bandwidth, and there are other congregations that are moving into version 2.0. So what are some ways that the conference can support you? And I see a question coming up about digital. So digital, the difference between online and digital is online is one piece of digital. So you can have phone that is digital. You can have a video that is digital. You can use email services that are digital, as opposed to simply online. I think a lot of congregations have moved to online as their way of worshiping when things started out in March. But the goal is to ask questions, as Kathy has said. How do you make this digital? Because the church now seems to, and worship might have moved from a place where face-to-face was primary and everything else was secondary to the digital being primary and other things are secondary. So when you think about digital, how do you expand your footprint on digital accessing and creating relational and congregational space digitally, as opposed to just online or just Zoom? Because Zoom is just one platform. So what are some ways? I'm looking at some of the comments in the chats about the Zoom virtual coffee and other ways. What are some ways that I see, does the conference pay for music licensing? I've heard that comment. I'm trying to suss that out. I don't know the answer to that question. I've heard it come up. What if we had a music bank where you could just capture music that you can use in your worship services? So give me a moment. I gotta figure that out. I heard that we've gone to the general board to ask that question, and we came back with the null set. So I gotta figure out how to capture some music. I heard that's a challenge. What are some other ways? And I think maybe if you can use your reaction button to raise your hand, that could be helpful. And Tua and the rest, I'm going to need your help in identifying maybe a hand raise. Some of the ways. I would love to figure out how to do a virtual choir. Yeah, I would. Yes. I don't know how to do a virtual choir. I've seen people that are doing videotaping music from different places and bringing that together, but it's a challenge with the distance protocols to get everybody in one room singing. Some other questions that might come up of how the conference can help. And if you are looking at chats, I see one advantage of having music. We're able to have our congregation worship. GarageBand, we're using GarageBand to get some of the worship going on. There's an app called Band Lab that allows choir members to contribute their respective parts. So Band Lab, BANDLAB, you can use to have the members do their parts. So Lee, you raised your hand. Lee, can you unmute? Tua, if you can allow Lee to unmute, let's see what we can, how we can do this. Yeah, Lee.
Oh, we are. Hey, just real quickly. First of all, keep up the Wednesday webinars. They've been great. That's one of the greatest things I've seen this conference do as far as getting together, resourcing each other. Second thing is, I can't say enough about Jason Moore, and if we could secure him to consult with churches based on their level of technical ability, so that somebody who's working in a lower ability doesn't have to sit through a seminar that goes beyond what they can do. That would be very helpful, and he's a great instructor. So just my 2 cents.
Good, thank you, thank you. Some other hands raised maybe that I can see. Let's see any. Keep the questions coming in the chat. We're almost running out of time for this session. If you want to hang around for the open mic to ask some questions, you can. Next week, we will be focusing on stewardship during this COVID moment. I'm culling and curating some of my friends that have worked in fund development, as I've had over the years, to talk with us about ways that we can work on our fall stewardship campaigns in COVID. So please join us next week for that time to just talk about fund development and stewardship in the COVID moment and some innovative ways that we can put some things together. I see there's some questions coming about who's Jason Moore. I saw some answers relative to that. Any other questions, please put them in the chat. Any ideas that you have or websites, please put them in the chat. I put the information about the phone in the chat. And I've also put a blog link that has some interesting information about digital worship and virtual worship in the chat. So please, and this is all recorded, and the chat information is available. So if you don't catch it all now, you can catch it a little bit next time. But I really want to thank Kathy and Alan and Craig and all of the people that have been around this important topic. So thank you. And thank you for joining with us, at least for this time. You're all free to just stay for the open mic. This is like coffee time. I call it the narthex time. So I'm sorry I don't have donuts or coffee for you, but just visually have coffee. I see you, Joe. But we have visual coffee, and it's open mic. So we'll have open mic. You can ask any questions you want, and let's see if we can get some answers or some things to you. Okay. Blessings to you. Please pray for those that are in the smoky regions of California, especially those that are affected by the Vacaville and all that. The fires over there are really bad. So let's keep each other in prayer and keep connected. Okay. So we'll see you. If you want to hang around, we're going to have open mic. So we'll see you in a little bit. Thank you.